Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of Anime Review. I'm Zach Reese, your host. Joining me as always, we got Deanna.
Hey.
Hey, and we got Nusha.
Yo,
Yo. Alright, sweet. This week in anime, there's been some high highs and some low ass lows, and I'm getting really tired of some of these shows. Yeah.
the haiku.
Yeah, it rhymes. That's my rap. Uh, Boy, I don't know about you guys. Half these shows I kind of want to drop right now, but I'm gonna stick it out because we're nearing the end of the season and we gotta do it. It's been quite the week. Some exciting stuff happened though, and it's stuff we're gonna get to. In terms of boy, My Hero Academia was something exciting happened there. High School Girl, very dramatic stuff going on, and boy, Trigun is getting so good, which is to be expected. Excited about talking about all those things. But first, let's just go ahead and recap the week before we get into that watch along that we've been doing. So, new show,
Yes.
Angels of Death.
Oh, we're starting with that one. Okay.
Yeah, as always, we started alphabetical order. I will mention before actually we talk about Angels of Death that Hanibado, I believe it makes it seem like the studio was affected by the earthquake that happened in Japan about a week ago. There's not been a new episode since last weekend. I should say a couple weekends ago. So we don't have an episode to talk about, so we'll be skipping that this week for obvious reasons. And I think that might be it. I think everything else is our shows that we've been actually been able to see. High School Girl, we've got 2 episodes to talk about, so we'll be getting into that. But yes, let's go ahead and start things off. New show. Let's talk about Angels of Death and why I'm having a difficult time with this damn show.
Talk
Holy
to me,
crap.
Zach. What's going on?
All right, so I will just say that this is picking up from the previous episode where they're in that witch trial, where Gray the priest has put Rachel on trial, accusing her of being a witch. And then he proceeds to say that her god doesn't exist because he himself is a god, and that's, here, he's the only god. He's some omnipotent being. And he also made it pretty clear they were talking about two separate gods, so I'm not quite sure why Rachel assumed that meant hers didn't exist. It's not like there's not only one religion in the world in any case, so the reaction felt off. Even Gray said multiple deities creates chaos. I guess if you're talking about religious wars, I don't know. It's like well, I think some people have been fine with that. So yeah, throughout this episode, it was kind of testing my patience a little bit about how much I could take. There was this whole part between Rachel and Zach where they have sort of a sentimental moment, and I nearly fell asleep. To be fair, it was like a little past 11 o'clock at night, and so we made this comment before that. So she finally was used her needle and thread that she has in her bag. I don't know why it's red thread, but whatever. It's just whatever. But there's this moment where she takes off some of his bandages and notices there are these burn marks all over his skin. And so when they're in the elevator heading up, Rachel asks Zach where he got the burns. Turns out his mom's boyfriend, shortly after he was born, although he looked like he was pretty old. He was like a pretty young boy at that point, so they must have been together for many years. He tried to burn Zach while he was alive, and they kind of left it at that. Like, oh, okay, it happened. That's what happened. Okay, that's like, it doesn't lead to anything more dramatic than that. It's just that you've got a psychotic boyfriend that decided to douse Zach with gasoline and try to lit him on fire. For some reason they didn't like each other, but boy, that guy sounds like he needed to be as much in a mental institution as Zach did. And there was also this little bit of a flashback where Rachel, I guess, witnessed her father killing her mother. It kind of seemed like that, and so this was some form of self-defense, which we kind of both of us assumed that was like something was related. Like it was, she was like somewhat innocent, but she ended up killing somebody anyway. But yeah, this show's kind of gone off the deep end. All adults are turns out to be assholes, and so that's what I've got from this. And then it did that thing. I don't know if you saw this new show, but there was a post-credits scene like they have had before, where there's a bit of a future diary moment where they go up to this place where it's like a hallway with a door at the end. Rachel's like, "Don't go in that room, Zach. You'll find out what's really going on." And I made the joke. It's like basically Rachel says, "I can't tell Zach the truth." Next episode, Rachel tells Zach the truth. That's all. That's the setup. Boy, Nusha, yeah, you were kind of down on this show a few episodes ago. I've started to not really enjoy my time with this because it's becoming a little too. I don't know if it's like too serious for its own good or too melodramatic or just not that interesting. Like the motivations are kind of confusing. What's been your take on this episode?
Yeah, tone-wise, it's been kind of off for me. I think I mentioned this before, but I think I was the most into this show when they like just entered Kathy's floor.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think that was, yeah, I think that was because it wasn't just like dark, dark, edgy, edgy, edgy. It was more like Zach and Rachel were both kind of playing off each other, and there was this like little comedic spin to it. It was still dark, don't get me wrong, but like it had like a nice comedic tinge to it. And then I don't know, it just kind of reverted back to just a little too overtly dark. And then these last like 3 episodes, it wasn't even Rachel and Zach, it was just Rachel, who is arguably the worst of the two protagonists, if you ask me. And so just I don't
Zach's
know,
good.
it
I like Zach, so I don't mind that.
Zach's fun, yeah, but like when you have this character Rachel whose defining characteristic is she has no emotions, is like, all right, well, where else can we go from here?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
it's not like she has no emotions. It's just that sometimes it's like it's not really earned. It's like okay, now you're acting
yeah,
this way.
exactly. And then like you have these murderers who are trying to convince her that she's somehow wronged them when I don't know, me as a viewer, I don't really believe that for a second. And then I guess the whole God relationship was interesting, like seeing her interact with the priest and then seeing his like deformed opinion of what God is. But I don't know. And then she makes that jump to Zach suddenly being her God, which kind of threw me for a
Yeah,
loop.
that was like
Yeah, it's
it
just
just
it's
was
just
that
a
like a
little
love?
odd.
Are they in love? I don't know. It's like I don't know where things lie here. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I know she's like I think one thing they're playing right now is like she's paranoid that they're right in saying that she's using Zach as a tool. And I think she's trying to convince herself that's not the case with how she's trying to help him and learn more about him. And there was like that moment in the elevator where she even like reconfirms with him, like, you still want to get out of here, right? Like, this isn't just me using you, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. What the fuck are you talking about? And so I thought that was kind of interesting, but just like, I don't know, maybe it was just the whiplash from having 3 or 4 Rachel centered episodes, and
Fair
maybe it'll
enough.
pick up, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's kind of the issue right now. It's that you don't know whether you can believe Rachel because Gray called her out on the fact that she might just be feeling guilty about her feelings and how she has been using him as a tool, as you said, and now is suddenly trying to get back in the good graces of God. And so it's like, do I want to believe her that well? Which is kind of getting to that future diary comment I made earlier. It's that like who can you trust once he goes
Yeah.
beyond that door? It's like if at some point considering Zach killed his foster parents anyway in self-defense. Oh, someone's at the door. uh
Oops.
that killed his parents in revenge, I should say. Why would he care if she defended her father or her mother? I guess in this case it'd look like be her mother in some form, like kill some people. He'd be like, ah, good for you, good job. It's like, well
Yeah, I
done.
don't really I don't really see the stakes here of holding that story back. It's just
No,
more
he's already
like,
killed a bunch of people. Why does he
yeah,
care? It's like, oh my
it's more
god,
just
you're
like
not as good.
artificial stakes for the viewers, I think. Just
Yeah.
like, oh, we need to wait and learn this big revealing backstory, but it's like you could have just said this in episode 3 and I probably would have been more on Rachel's side throughout this whole story. But now we're waiting for this big twist and it's like, oh, I can't tell Zach, but it's like he's a
Um,
serial killer. He's not necessarily the most moral compass to be following right now.
yeah. There's only two ways this can go. Either she killed Zach's parents, actual like blood related parents, which would kind of be crazy, and their brother and sister or something like that, which would make it even weirder. Or two, she
Hmm.
committed genocide. Because I don't know how awful you can go before it's like,
Genocide.
like it would have to be something extreme for her to be looking like a worse person than Zach is supposed to be. So I'm curious to see where they'll take it. But like, yeah, next episode is gonna make or break this entire show for me. I think. It's like at this
Yeah.
point, I'm having a difficult time sitting through it. So we'll find out.
Hmm. I actually didn't see that post credit scene either, so
Oh yeah, it's just that. It's just like they go up to the floor. There's a hallway. Walks to the door, and it's like Rachel's like can't speak for some reason because it's dramatic, and she's like, "No, don't go in there. Don't go in there. Don't go in there." And he's like, "What's going?" He's just walking to the door and opening it like a normal person. I don't know. It's it's gonna be something. We'll find out.
Mm, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dramatic, Attack on Titan. Things have obviously been getting a lot better. It seems like in the show, in terms of the what the characters themselves are dealing with. Like things are getting better, and Aaron obviously has been busted out of his chains, and so Deanna, hopefully someone answered the door. But what's going on this show?
I'm so sorry that did not.
That
I did not expect that.
That's all right.
So last week, the episode ended with Historia's dad on the ground and licking up that Titan juice. And
Ugh.
so he becomes
Titan
he
juice.
becomes a Titan. And then so this week, Levi and the crew, they come and save Aaron. And then Aaron has the choice to either save everyone or just like let himself be eaten or something. But so Aaron just decides to drink an armor potion, which is where he's able to harden his Titan body. And so because of that, he's able to save everyone from the underground like cave from collapsing on them. And so Rod Rice, he becomes a Titan that's like much larger than the Colossal Titan, and he's currently crawling towards Orvid District. As an abnormal, he doesn't really care about the scouts that are trying to stop him. He's just heading in one direction and has this like burning, sickly body that like won't let anything near it. So there's a lot of dialogue in this episode, but I didn't mind because the intensity of everyone's expressions and the voice acting was good. And then instead of having Aaron get eaten, Historia wants everyone to kill her dad to save humanity. So I like that the show's setting up alternative choices rather than a kind of all or nothing situation.
Yeah.
And then we're also grappling with the idea that, one's free will versus being forced into a role for the sake of humanity or society. So Levi kind of tells Historia that she needs to take up the role as the queen once they, finish their like coup d'etat and whatnot. So, but it was also nice to see that her comrades stood up for her when they realized what Levi's orders meant, that she would have to like give up her identity after like finding it a couple episodes ago. So, how did you feel, Nusha?
This show's definitely been picking up for me. I've been really happy with this season.
That's good.
This was kind of like a recentering of like our characters' goals, I would say, because now that Aaron can crystallize his body, they have to go back to Wall Maria to patch up the hole. And then doing that means they can go down to the basement that Aaron's dad has been, or that Aaron's dad told him in the beginning, like, you need to go here and figure out the truth. So I'm hoping we're going to see them go back and we're going to learn more about what happened the day Aaron's dad attacked the Rice family. Um, Aside from that, I really like what they're doing with Historia this season. I think before she was just kind of like dragged along for the ride, but these past few episodes have really focused on her. And then even at the end where they're saying we want to put you, once this is all done, said and done, we want to put you in as queen. She doesn't just kind of fall into that role like Dana said. You kind of see her go, okay, that's fine, but I have a condition. I still want to fight alongside you guys. So it's not just like localizing her to one like niche. She's still like an active agent in this series. So it's nice to see the focus being put on more characters. In fact, Aaron really hasn't gotten much at all this season. So I'm interested to see if maybe when they go back to the basement, maybe he'll get some more development or more fleshing out. But as of right now, I really like this like character centered focus and like this focus on humanity, not just Titans, Titans, Titans.
That's kind of the effect I got, is that you guys, since this new season started, haven't really talked about Aaron that much. So yeah, it's pretty clear that he's not quite the central figure in this series so far. But as you said, that seems like it could change sometime soon. So we get to know more about what's going on. Then again, he had whole 2 seasons to himself, so I think it's okay to have one season where it's not. Although Levi was a big driver in the second season too, so it's kind of nice, as you said, that they're giving attention to the other characters that wouldn't. That their motivations and their characters weren't explained maybe as fully as they could have. So That's good to hear. Well, continuing on, I got a couple texts a few nights ago. You guys were watching Banana Fish, and you said, "Thank God it's a good episode. It's a good-natured episode. It's the good feelings. It's not the everyone's dying feelings." Nusha, how'd this episode go?
This was a really interesting episode, actually. Like we've mentioned and we've joked a lot that Ash just kind of keeps facing more and more trials. He keeps getting the shit knocked out of him and facing more and more loss. And this is kind of like a breather from that. And not so much that it's just like excessively happy or bright toned or anything like that, but this is
Sure.
kind of a much needed moment for him to mourn. I don't think we get very many moments for him to actually just kind of process what happened. Like when Skip died in the beginning of the series, he just kind of immediately went out and tried to avenge him and then got thrown into jail. And then his brother died and he immediately went out and tried to kill Gozine. And then here we kind of see him break down for the first time on the heels of a Shorter's death. And so we see what AG kind of brings to the table in this series. He's not dangerous, or he's not like the character to go out and wield a gun and kill people, but he's this character that the only character that Ash can really open up to like this. And so we kind of see the two sides to Ash. Like there's the gangster, the one who goes out and kills people and avenges his family, and then there's just like the 17-year-old kid who was thrown into this life that he has no business leading. And with AG, he can actually be that 17-year-old kid and just kind of break down and cry for like all the loss and trauma and darkness he's experienced. So it was really nice to see this side to Ash that we only got to see maybe little glimpses of, like when he's consoling Max's kid or just hanging out with AG. So seeing an entire episode dedicated to that was really interesting. I don't know what you thought, Deanna.
Yeah, it was a really funny, cute, and refreshing episode. I feel like a lot of people are watching this show for Ash's and AG's relationship. And so in this episode, it was beautifully shown, as you can see with that picture. So it's not trying to be too cheesy and it's not forced. So I've never seen Ash or AG smile or laugh that much. So it healed me after the shit show from the past couple of weeks. But yeah, as you said, Nushal, like Ash can only be himself around aging. Like he's just a 17-year-old kid with, fears about who he's becoming. And so for him to be able to loosen up around AG, it's really comforting and heartwarming. I also like that we kind of jump back and forth between the boys talking in the room, and then we get Max and eBay, who are basically like the two dads talking about their sons. So it gives like an outsider's perspective on the relationship. So it's not just like the audience that feels this way with the boys. And so Ash, he is currently plotting to damage Golzine's influences by hacking and stealing his money through the corporations that Dino owns. And so Ash meets up with Max so that Max can buy a condo for him with the money he stole. And so that condo is going to be where like AG's going to stay for his own safety. But I feel like that's not going to work out well. I feel like AG will somehow, be part of this whole fiasco again because he wants to protect Ash too. So, and then Arthur at the end, he's getting a second chance and he's determined to seek revenge, but that scene just like pales in comparison to everything else about this episode. So, yeah.
It seems like to give the heartwarming step out of the way because it sounds like the show might turn again. So at any point,
There's more shit to come. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you take these moments while you can, because you need a moment of respite considering what's happened before, and we're only this is like the 9th or 10th episode of Banana Fish.
11th.
11th. Okay, so yeah. How long is
Is
this
this
show
a 12
supposed to go?
episode?
Yeah.
Huh?
Is this a 12 episode?
It's 24.
Oh, shit.
Okay. Well.
Oh god, he's got so much more to go through.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of trauma to deal with at this point. The life of a gangster. All right, so on that note, let's get into Cells at Work. Yeah, This show I thought was better. It's actually part of maybe the best episode since which sounds kind of weird, the cancer episode, uh, because it's something that you can kind of understand and relate to. Because this episode was all about the body experiencing heat stroke, and spores have invaded the body, trying to take advantage of that fact, and so the body is experiencing different feelings of like vertigo, dizziness, fainting, and then heat stroke. And by the end of it, the body's fixed through transfusion, through an IV that to replenish the fluids, the nutrients, electrolytes, and so forth. And so, yeah, I think generally speaking, this episode was pretty good because here in SoCal, which all three of us are from, it's been in the 80s, the 90s, and sometimes the hundreds degrees. And so it was a pretty good episode that explained something a lot of people are going through right now. And I thought that was kind of neat to explain. These are the feelings you've got, and this is the process. So if you start to experience that, understand you might be going through this mood of heat stroke, this condition of heat stroke, and you need to rehydrate as much as possible. So I thought it was pretty neat. What do you think about it, Deanna?
This episode gave me war flashbacks of AX because of how hot it was.
Oh my gosh, we had to walk all over the place.
Yeah, and how everyone was just crowded and sweating, and yeah.
110 degrees. Yeah, it was the hottest point it'd been in the summer. Oof.
But yeah, the show, I feel like it's slowly reverting back to its former self, where it's getting more entertaining and humorous. But
Yeah.
there were quite a few definition dumps, so I don't know
Oh.
if that bothered you, Zach.
It kind of did. I mean, I was kind of interested at the same time to learn more about, because I don't like, I sometimes have a difficulty understanding what exactly dizziness and vertigo, like what the difference is, because it's like, oh, you got imbalanced feelings. It's like a lot of the words kind of blend together sometimes because I'm not too read up on those things. So I thought it was it still sometimes does get in the way of the show when everything kind of grinds to a halt trying to explain how things operate. But I guess it's all about what the context is, and in this case, am I interested in learning more about this particular condition someone's going through? I'd say yes, and so I was okay with it. And they showed a lot more platelets, as you can see in this picture, and so I was okay with that too.
Yeah.
They're being adorable, trying to reach up to grab like the glass of water, and they couldn't, so they needed help from somebody who's taller. It was pretty adorable. But yeah, it's
I feel like the bacteria we've been seeing in these episodes, they don't feel as threatening, especially when we've already met like the final boss, which is the cancer cell. So I don't feel as engaged in that, fight between white blood cells and the bacteria.
I get the feeling that the last episode of this show might be something related to like a hemorrhage, just because it would involve a lot of parts of the body, especially the red blood cells. And so I think that's I was thinking about it from the cancer episode, like where else could they go from here? And a hemorrhage would probably be the only thing I can think of that would cause them to really focus in and have a very dramatic show. But I don't know what else they can do with it. So at this point, I'll take these moments of like an episode here and there might be good enough. So we'll have to see. All right, moving on, we can talk about something that we all enjoy, and that's pretty boys getting angry at each other. What's free Dive to the Future going on with that, Deanna?
So this episode, there's more focus on Haru's training. Rin and Sasuke, they reunite, and then Makoto has this realization that he wants to become someone who supports swimmers globally. So he wants to be a trainer. Not like Pokemon, but
Go! Just throws out the ball and like starts swimming. All right, sweet.
So the All Japan tournament is coming up, and everyone's been training hard. And he's been training under this guy named Ryuji Azuma. He used to be a big deal as a swimmer back in the day, and I think he was an Olympic swimmer. But now he's training Haru because he believes Haru will become just as good, if not better, than Albert, the foreigner kid from last week, who apparently holds a couple world records for his swimming. So he is a formidable opponent.
Yes.
So Azuma tells Haru that he needs to brush up on the basics before he can swim better. But he mentions like this really complex concept that confuses Haru. So Makoto comes by and kind of breaks it down to Haru in the only concept that he understands, which is mackerel.
Oh.
And so Makoto's like, yeah, so just think of it as like when you're cooking and preparing mackerel, and then Haru's like, ah, I see.
Something to relate.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was kind of worried that the show might make Haru emo after losing that race last week with Albert, but he's actually more determined to win now. So that was a good place to, go instead of making the show angsty again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and so like Makoto, he realizes he wants to become a trainer because he's been helping this kid Misaki out who wants to beat his rival in a race, which is not an unfamiliar concept. But yeah, just seeing like Makoto, like his generation, teaching the younger generation to swim and just like remember, it is competition, but it's also about, that connection that you feel with the water and then with the people that you swim with. So I can't believe this is going to end in 2 episodes because I feel
Oh.
like there are a lot of plot threads that still need to be tied up. But like with the kind of show that this is, like it's a series that's like a fan favorite and it's basically a cash cow that milks its content. But
Yes.
it's like there's a very large cast, so like there's a lot of places it can go. So either way, like I'm a devout Free fan, so I look forward to what's to come.
Yeah, like movies, OVAs. They've already done a free movie, so they could potentially do something like that. Or, as you said, continue on with another season because a lot of Japan likes these boys, and so I think that would I would say the world over probably does too. So yeah, it when you said 2 episodes left, I'm like, oh, things that seem like they're just ramping up. That's kind of difficult to deal with, I suppose. All right. Well, this show that I'm going to talk about is nowhere near complete. GeGeGe no Kitaro. Apparently, I looked down. I'm like, oh, episode 24. This is supposed to run for like 50 plus episodes, so I don't know where I'm at right now. But once again, you get this was a pretty good episode. So the whole setup here is that Ratman, who is the biggest douchebag in the entire series, suddenly gets married. And I was immediately not buying it because I knew for a fact that he was being probably scammed because he's the one who usually does that. So he kind of got his comeuppance. And that's kind of what the case was. Considering all the shit that he pulled, conning everyone under the sun, I'm not surprised it happened to him. In this case, it was the Sekio. And so she's got a history. In the picture, she's obviously the one on the left. Upsetting Cat Chick because I guess Ratman told her that Cat Chick was very jealous of how gorgeous Ratman is and wanted to be with him instead. Wanted her to be with him instead. So it was kind of stupid. So she apparently tricked a lot of men, and it was kind of funny because at some point in the show, it's like she would give the man a Sekio, the yokai would give the man a massage, and they would fall asleep, and she would proceed to rob them of all the money on their person. And so they, Cat Chick and everybody else, they go around and start sign waivers to like get together to do a lawsuit, which I thought was pretty great. But yeah, the whole show is that she gets chased down, and Ratman, who still has feelings for her despite wronging him, you kind of got to see him in a new light because he was very, empathetic and sentimental towards her. I kind of wish that he was this decent all the time because there's been plenty of episodes where I just hate his guts. And so I just thought it was kind of a lighthearted episode, all things considered, not high stakes. She clearly just wanted to, help survive the elements that she was in over all these years. And so I thought this was a pretty cute episode all around. And it continues to be a show I really enjoy, looking forward to every week, even if it comes out Saturday night, so I have to like rush to watch it before we do these episodes. So I'm happy about it, and I still highly recommend it for people who want like these really light-hearted, charming episodes because technically it's for kids. Sometimes you don't think it's for kids though, because there's even like they go to a hotel like Ratman and Sekio, and they have like this, they get undressed and go to the bath together. So I don't know if this is for kids. This is kind of mixed messages there. All right. So moving on from that though, another long running series we could talk about with Deanna, Gintama, Silver Soul 2. How was the episode for you?
Before I talk about the episode, I have great news. So apparently, Gintama is not ending like the manga.
Oh.
It's only ending its run in Jump before it's going to move over to Jump Giga, which is a monthly or seasonal magazine. And so, yeah, apparently Sorachi, the mangaka, he made the mistake of like believing that he'll finish the series like by this month, but he miscalculated, and so Shonen Jump is like, okay, well, we'll just have you move over to this other magazine where you can finish up Gintama there.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so yeah, so we're also that means we're gonna get another season of the Gintama anime. So I'm really happy.
So it's
Man, all
not
this
ending. It's
drama.
just like it's ending later, but just
Yes.
not now. Okay, so
Yeah.
they're like still in the last arc, or is it like he's doing a
Yeah.
whole new?
No, yeah, it's in the last arc,
Okay.
but
Oh, okay. There's not
yeah,
going to be a great ninja war.
no.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was gonna say all this build up and nothing happens. I'm like, wow, it made it seem like everything was coming to a close, but not. So that's nice.
No. The next chapter is going to be out in December, so that's going to be quite a few months away. But at least like Sorachi, he wrote this letter to fans saying like he was comparing himself to a grandpa and how all of us readers were like trying to go after his inheritance, and then he's like, I don't have any inheritance because you guys are my inheritance. And I was like, oh man.
Oh.
So yeah. But so the anime for this week, they've just been adding more parodies and references while also expanding on the Final Fantasy phenomenon. They're just not
Great.
gonna let that go.
No.
But it's just the episode was just silliness all around with a touch of drama and feels. We finally get to see Gintoki again, and he's wearing different pattern robes. Previously, he wore robes that were like circular patterns, like where the blue things
Yeah.
are.
Well, next to is the sleeves at the end of his sleeves and his pants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Pants. The robes have pants.
Robes. Yeah.
Yes, that's what
Yes.
they're called.
The robe
Pants.
pants.
So
Shut your
he
face.
sees Takasugi, the purple dude back there, and they kind of have this brief brawl before the cops come and try to arrest them. And then one of the cops is Hijikata. He's the former vice chief of the Shinsengumi. And so Hijikata brings Gintoki to an interrogation room. And then they're just like, it's an interrogation scene, but then it's just them two dissing each other. and then and then there's this mob cop guy typing like normally on the side, and then Hijikata notices and he's like, wait, who are you? Like, you're suddenly here, like it's no big deal. and then like stupid antics occur. Like, I sent you guys a screen cap of this guy like pooping.
Oh.
But he's making curry or something.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
gosh. Ridiculous.
And then it turns out that mob cop guy is actually one of the former Shinsengumi, Yamazaki. And everyone thought he died during the final battle, but he now has a robotic body. And so he tries to kill Hijikata and Gintoki because they forgot about him, even though they insist that they remember, but like they just keep calling like the wrong names. And so Gintoki escapes, but before that he asks Hijikata how Yorozuya or Ajobs, how they're doing, the kids, and Hijikata's like, why don't you ask them yourself? But Gintoki just smiles and leaves, and I guess like he's not ready to see them yet. And so we go back to Shinpachi, who he's been dealing with these two children, basically lollies.
Yeah.
So he's been dealing with like a kid version of Tama, who's a robot maid, and also this young girl who looks like Kagura named Kana. And Kana, I guess like she was born from eating too many bananas. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Can
just
relate.
this like grotesque image of Kagura like with an arm coming out of her mouth.
Oh gosh.
And it's just so stupid and ridiculous. But this man in a suit eventually finds them and tries to kill them, and it turns out it's Sogo from the Shinsengumi. So this whole episode was basically bringing back members of the Shinsengumi and seeing what they've been up to. So yeah.
There's been a lot of catch up. I mean, I'm sure it's very relieving to understand that the show would continue on probably puts the characters in a different light that way because you know that there'll be more to come for them. But yeah, that's sounds ridiculous. What the heck with the freaking curve?
Yes.
I love it. All right, so Nusha, now we can talk about how we played catch up with High School Girl, and I kind of wish I did use that other image for part of me, but this is also a great shot because it kind of shows what Ono's going through right now. So we've got a picture up here. People are just listening to the audio version of this, where Ono's sitting alone at a Virtual Fighter cabinet without Haru around, and so it's this first episode, episode 9. It really started to set in that Ono and Haru will no longer be able to hang out during summer break like they used to because they're about to enter high school and they have to focus on entrance exams in order to get in there. And this was actually the first time that Haru, I pronounce it, finally admits to himself that he wants to be with her, which made me feel bad for Hidaka because that's kind of, once again, that's the person I'm kind of rooting for at this point. I'll also say I kind of love Haru's mom because she's in constant noble laugh mode. I like how when they did this little part when she's talking to, I think it was like the chauffeur for Ono, she's like, oh, 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 oh. That's like all she said during the whole segment. And generally speaking, she's just a great mother all around. I thought she was awesome, and she understood like release dates for video games. Like she seems to be more on the pulse than Haru was at sometimes. And it also made me feel very nostalgic, these 2 episodes, because I certainly remember that period in the 90s because I'm old enough to know that, where the arcades were where you would go to experience like the latest video game tech. Because I remember being blown away with games like when they showed like Samurai Showdown 2 and Virtua Fighter 2 and those games. Like that was insane at the time, and I loved how fluid everything looked. And so yeah, even as like a little kid, I could still understand what was going on there. So and then things kind of wrapped up where Ono and Haru in the same car, and when they're just kind of like being going to the arcade or something like that. I forget exactly what the destination was, but Ono reaches over and clasps Haru's hand, just kind of grabs it. I thought that was like a very heartwarming moment. It's like, obviously he means a lot to her, even if she can't really express that. And so that was pretty nice. So I'll let you take over from here, though, because Nusha, because these 2 episodes once again reaffirms how much I'm really enjoying this show overall.
Yeah, this show is definitely like a sneaker for me. Like I wasn't really expecting it to grasp me the way it did. I think you recommended it to me and I kind of liked the look of it and I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And then a couple episodes in, I think it also helped that it has so much of a focus on fighting games, which is something I've always been a huge fan of.
Oh yeah, totally.
So that kind of grasped me immediately. And I think, I don't know if it was you or another friend of mine who called it like you might have done that on the podcast. You called it like the Dagashikashi of video games.
Oh yeah, I referenced
that might have been you, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very apt comparison. But like these last 2 episodes really moved away from that and really focused on like the emotional side of it. Like I was really surprised to see Haruo like face his emotions with the level of maturity he did. Like we've kind of seen him just act like a kid and be very oblivious to everything going on around him. So it was genuinely surprising in that scene where he goes, this isn't just me wanting to like hang out. This is me actually wanting to be with Ono, and not just as like a rival, but as something more than that.
Yeah. Replied it.
But yeah, like you said, yeah. Like you said though, aside from that, like the comedy was also didn't suffer at all, even though they focused on the emotional side of it. Like every time they bust out Haruo's mom, like I know I'm gonna have a good laugh because she's easily the funniest character in this series.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Like no question. But
and the part with Meow, like he's like gets right up in Haru's face, like you're too close, you're too fucking close, and he's like, "You're gonna do this, I'm gonna kiss you." So, like, it's a great moment.
I actually completely forgot. I mistook. I think last week I talked about Meow being a good friend. Yeah. And I briefly mentioned that he used to be like a little shit when he was when he was younger.
I was thinking about that too because I was looking. I was like, no, wait. I think I may have also mistaken because it's like, yeah, that other boy, the pretty boy.
I mistook him. Doi, yeah, I completely mistook him for Doi. As soon as he showed up, I was like, wait, what?
Oh my gosh.
So I guess they were 2 separate characters. So I just wanted to rectify that. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair though, like this episode 10, Annoy, he also had some good moments as well that I liked.
Yeah, kind
So,
of tell that Haru's gonna kind of win him over too. Like
yeah,
that's kind of something that happens a lot here. Is like the genuine like love and passion that Haru has for the small amount of things that he does care about, like kind of naturally draws people to him. And
yeah,
so I think we're gonna see more of that. Like he's recruited Meow and now he's gonna recruit Dois. So
yeah,
I'm interested to see how his circle of friends grow.
yeah.
Um, but something I really liked in this episode was, or these last two episodes really, was you kind of seeing Haruo try at something other than just like video games when he genuinely tried to get into a better school so he can continue spending time with Ono. I
Yeah.
thought it was a very, very endearing moment for him. And I just kept thinking of that episode of The Simpsons where Bart finally like tries to do well in school and
Oh,
then
the
he
test,
fails and
yeah,
it's like this heartbreaking moment. And like we kind of see that here too. Like he kind of becomes recluse. Like he locks himself away in his home and he doesn't really go out to the arcades anymore. And at
yeah,
first it kind of seems like, oh, it's just because a bunch of games came out. But you kind of can tell that it's like he can't really face Ono right now because he's fallen behind in video games. He can't really keep up with schoolwork. And like, I don't know, it's kind of hard for him to believe that he can face her the way he is right now.
yeah.
Like even Hidaka's like knocking him up and down the street in like his favorite fighting games. So it's interesting to see him finally have this lack of confidence in something he's previously been so confident about. So I'm interested to see what happens after this.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing. It's that, yeah, he had a bit of a wake up call. And this is something that we talked about before, but you can like understand a lot of that because he's just a kid. And so clearly
Hmm.
he didn't fully understand emotions of people around him because he just isn't mature enough at the time to be able to do that, which is funny because Meow seems to always, he was always mature to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And it also was kind of a big moment for Hidaka because it was kind of sad at some points too because she in episode 10 especially she worked really hard to get very good at video games, and it's all because she wanted Haru to notice her. And the reaction that she gets is that she's kind of rubbing it in, and Haru gets upset about that, and so I feel kind of bad for her regarding his attitude. More that it's like it's because he's like it's because I've fallen out. She's so much better, and also I there's like two different situations. I did like how she rubbed it in. She was like she had a lot of pride and how better she got.
Yeah.
And it was, but there was that moment where she says she knew full well that Haru doesn't care about her. So that was a little heartbreaking. Um, and what I got from that, from that entire episode, is that she is really how Ono would be if she actually spoke. Because so it's an interesting contrast because she's got a lot of pride. She speaks the way I mean, she's pretty she's pretty open about her feelings about that stuff. Meow can he can tell everything. He knew exactly like the feelings that he got. I mean, he even pinpointed is like he misses Ono. So
Yeah.
he's very
Very
sharp.
intuitive.
Yo, totally intuitive. But Hidaka, at the end of the episode, they I forget what the moment was, but like they both reach and she touches hands with Ono, and so there's going to be a big episode next time where it's like they're finally going to encounter each other on these terms, and so it's gonna be very interesting to see how they're going to react to each other, and
Hmm.
maybe they'll have a fighting match, and that'll be very interesting to see who wins on
I
that.
feel
So,
like that's what's gonna happen. Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's gonna be kind of crazy. So I'm excited about that. Well, moving on from that to Muyo and Roji's Supernatural Bureau. I don't know the subtitle because I just put Muyo and Roji. So every time I'm going to continue to guess what the subtitle was.
One of these days you have to try and say it in Japanese.
I'm not going to look it up. No.
I
So,
can send it to you right now.
no, we're good. You continue on and talk to me about the show that has been on a bit of a, I don't know. What you
It's had
feel?
its ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this episode we kind of it seems like we're moving back to uh I think last episode we did like more of the weekly investigation thing, but if the
Yeah.
preview for the next episode is any indicator, I think this episode is kind of going to deal with the grander narrative. And it was more of a world building affair for this series. So we get to meet Biko, which is this character that we have on screen, this adorable little character. who is a magical tools master. And so basically what that is these are the people who develop the tools that the executors and the judges use to hold back spirits and seal them away. So anything from like the talismans to the pens to even the book that Mukio uses, these are the characters that create those for them. And so basically she reaches out to them because there's this prison where spirits are being held, and these spirits are actually ones that have not been able to be sealed away because we learned that there's the number of executors who are able to deal with spirits are slowly dwindling, while the number of spirits that are becoming aggressive and dangerous are growing at like an exponential rate. And so not being able to seal all of them away, they kind of just lock some of them up in this prison where they can't do more harm than they already have.
Hmm.
And so here we learned that the most dangerous spirit in this prison, playfully referred to as Sophie the Face Ripper, broke out of her cell. And basically, Biko feels responsible for that because it was his talisman that was holding her back. And so she reaches out for Muhyo and Roji to help them seal up this prison again. And that's basically what this episode finds its characters doing. So yeah, as far as like the world goes in this series, I really like what they're doing here. We're learning more about like the specialized roles here. There are executors, there are judges, there are the people who develop the tools. We have like the teachers, the students. Like we're getting more of a fleshed out version of what this like magical society is like.
Sure, yeah.
Um, and then as far as characters go, we see more of that lack of confidence that Roji's been showing in the past 2 episodes. In this in this episode before they get down to Sophie, the main, like, spirit, they're tackled by 2 smaller, like, weaker spirits, and then for some reason or other, Muhyo can't use his all-powerful book of a million spells that he's used in the past few episodes. I think
Did he
they're
lose
trying to
it?
set up
Oh, okay.
No, they're trying
Again?
to set up
Jeez.
I think they're trying to establish that it, like, takes a lot out of him to do this, like, I think his character like, they established that he sleeps a lot, and I think that's because, like, it's supposed to be very taxing to use these spells of his, and so, I think we're supposed to be learning here that Muhyo is supposed to be, like, the last resort. He's supposed to be the guy that goes after, like, the big baddie, while Roji's the one who's supposed to, like, cover him when, like, smaller apparitions come and attack him. And so, we kind of we see Roji have to try and pick up the slack here, which is kind of daunting because we've seen him fail multiple times when it's counted the most. And
Hmm.
so, I'm hoping what they do here is it seems like this is what they're setting up, but it seems like they're gonna make it so Muhyo's gonna have to learn to leave some stuff up to other people. He's gonna have to leave some stuff to Roji, and then Roji's gonna have to learn to gain a little confidence in himself so he can become like a more competent partner to Muhyo. So I'm interested to see these 2 characters kind of play off each other and become more competent in their own right. But yeah, as far as action goes, it was pretty satisfying. I like what they did with the world building here. I still I think something that immediately drew me to this series originally was the character designs.
Yeah, that's
And
kind of what I would
characters like Biko that I'm showing here just I love dumb little designs like this where it's kind of like large shapes and very colorful and vibrant. So we're getting more and more of that. And so I don't know, it's picking up. I think the last few episodes I was a little on the fence for, and this is by no means an amazing episode. It was just kind of right down the middle. So I'm excited to see more and I'll probably keep up with it.
Well, good. Because yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say is that the character designs were also something that I do remember seeing this show before, like a few months ago, like when it was first revealed to have an anime. So I was kind of drawn to that. So let me know how it continues to go. Let's talk about
Will
another
do.
show that you can talk to me about. Planet with. I mentioned before that I had some people on social media that really crazy that they love the show. I think you also mentioned it probably wasn't as good as the last episode, but it was still pretty damn good. So talk to me about what made this show so special.
Yeah, if anyone's not watching Planet with, watch Planet with. I would say this is easily the highlight of this season for me. And yeah, I did say the episode was like a little less. I mean, for me personally, it was not as great as the last episode, but that by no means takes anything away from how great this episode was.
Oh.
But basically, this episode was just one 20-minute long mech fight, uh, because the last two like villains we have in this series are the boss of the Ceiling faction and then the dragon, who we've learned has basically been unsealed. And so this is basically the last fight between our main characters who are with the pacifist faction and then the Ceiling faction. Um, and so we learn that the leaders of both of these factions, they both actually have real names that I'm not going to try and pronounce, because in anime, when they try and make up alien names, they're usually these like 7-syllable long alliterated names that I don't really plan on explaining. But
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting because up until now, um, the Ceiling faction, their leader, instead of giving out his name, he prefers to be called the Generalissimo. And then
Ooh.
the pacifist faction, he has everyone call him Sensei. And so I thought that was kind of interesting because it kind of gives a little bit of an inclination of how they treat their jobs. Like you see the Ceiling faction is all about imposing their will and their power over people. And so it kind of makes sense that he would want to refer to himself as the general, whereas the pacifist faction that plans on teaching these people to better use the tools that they're developing would of course want to be called like sensei, like a teacher or like an authority that they can turn to when they're in need. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, this was pretty much just one long fight, so it's kind of hard to think of more to say about it. Of course, there was that really hype moment at the end. It's kind of a trope in a lot of mech anime where the two pilots will jump out of their mechs and just kind of have this long slugfest face
Oh,
to face. And so
is
they definitely worked that in there, which was super hype. I was really into it.
I hope that
Um,
the robots were immobile. Like, why else would you jump out of these like very strongly constructed mechs?
yeah, but it was great. I think. Oh yeah, and then what's interesting is once this whole conflict resolved itself, naturally we're gonna move on to the dragon, and so
Yeah.
I think it's prophesized that he's gonna break free in 5 years, and so naturally we get like a 5-year time skip at the end of
Ah.
the episode here. We get to see Kuroi all grown up, and it was kind of sweet because we get to see him. He kind of very much resembles his older brother, who he looked up to in the beginning of the series. So it was nice to
Oh.
see that kind of parallel. But yeah, it looks like the last episode we're going to be in this time skip, and we're going to be facing the dragon. And I don't really think it's going to be much of a long slugfest because in the flashback that we saw before, we saw that Sensei told them, "I'm going to prove that you were wrong in eradicating this planet by raising this kid from Sirius to be a character that totes like love and respect and peace above war and fighting."
Yeah.
And we've very much seen the main character become that. Like he started as this Avenger. He kind of focused on his like self-destructive goals. He didn't really care about others or the planet. And then we see now that he accepts that he has attachments to this world. He's moved on from his past and he's actually able to make connections and fight for people that he previously wouldn't have considered his own.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really interesting. Again, small gripe. Uh, in an episode that's completely focused on like a mech fight, it's kind of hard to overlook how clunky the CG can look sometimes.
Oh.
But that's just kind of unavoidable. I mean, this is it's not like a huge budget show. This is kind of an underground title. I don't think a lot of people know what this is right now, but still, it would be really nice to see these really neatly designed mechs kind of move in a little more dynamic and kinetic a way. But again, small gripe for how amazing the show has been from start to finish so far. I'm excited for the finale.
Yeah, that seems like it's going to be pretty exciting. Like I said, so many people have a lot of praises for the show, and so it's good to hear that you're also really enjoying it too. I'm sure it bounces out some of the other shows that you've been watching, so that's nice to hear. So, talking about a show that's been kind of a roller coaster, Tenru, Sirius the Jaeger. So, Deanna, how was this episode?
So this episode continues off from when the two lolly vampires are attacking Yuri. And so
Of course.
Yuri has come a long way from like ruthlessly killing vampires in the beginning to now showing them mercy out of like pity or sympathy. So he had like this moment where he could have killed one of the lollies, but there's this like fear in her eyes, and he just didn't kill her, and so they get away. But yeah, so it goes back to the vampires and Mikhail, Yudi's older brother. His protective brother vibes are really showing in this episode because he's trying to like break in somewhere to get info or something, and then he gets caught by Yevgraf, and then there's like one of these like vampire underlings that starts to freak out and like starts, I don't know what you call it, like break out into hysteria or something, and then he like turns into like a demonic vampire, and then the other vampires have to kill him because apparently he was plagued with some sort of illness that the other vampires are trying to figure out like why. Like we've been getting hints that there's something killing the vampires, like a virus, but they don't know what it is, which is why they want the arc. And so um we also get backstory on, is it Alexei? Alexei?
Alexei or something like that.
Alexei, yeah.
Papa
Yudi's
Yuri.
Yuri's dad. But so apparently he was close with the former captain of the Japanese military. And the captain is that old man right there who was like the gatekeeper of the Ark. And so he's the one who knows where the Ark is. And instead of returning to Japan, he decides to like fulfill his promise with Alexei that he'll protect the Ark from being discovered. But but yeah, the other Jaegers, they're in Dogville, apparently putting the dead villagers to rest, though I think there's another reason why they're there. The professor's definitely up to something. But then we also get Ryoko. She somehow finds her way to Yuri instead of going to London or whatever. Where she tags along with the Japanese major who's been trying to solve this whole vampires and arc fiasco. But there's this scene between her and Yuri, like standing on a balcony, and it was kind of sweet, like not really romantic because Yuri was able to open up more by asking her about like, oh, what's it like to have a dad and stuff, and so he's able to become more human in that aspect, like more relatable and not just like, oh, I have to kill vampires, like I don't care about anyone else. But yeah, and then at the end, the mad scientist raises an army of smaller Frankensteins because he can.
As you do.
But yeah, I don't know how you felt about this episode, Nusha.
I was a big fan of it. It was a very dad-heavy episode. We're learning more about Yuri's dad, and then we're learning more about the relationship that the commander of the V shipping company has with Yuri. And it's being set up as a very father-son relationship kind of thing. Yuri didn't really have a reason for living until he met the commander, and then he kind of taught him how to fight, how to live. He introduced him to these members of the V shipping company, who are arguably Yuri's only family now. And I thought that made this scene in Dogville actually really touching. They kind of arrive there for, like Deanna said, some purpose that we're not completely aware of yet. But before they start doing that, we see that they start burying Yuri's family members and loved ones. And then I thought the captain's apology was actually very touching there because he still naturally feels guilty for being the one who led the vampires to Dogville and kind of admittedly causing the death of Yuri's family. And so him kind of apologizing to his crew kind of shows that he sees this as a favor in them kind of like helping him repent for what he's done. And you can see that he's still kind of being torn up for what he's done to his like adoptive son. But I don't think the other characters would have necessarily seen it that way. I think to them, much like the Commander Yuri's family, and I think this is something that they would have done regardless, but either way, it was a really sweet moment. So I'm glad the series is moving more from just like edgy themes of revenge and vampires and whatever to kind of like themes of found family and like renewed purpose, figuring out what your goal in life is, and kind of like expanding your worldview and making family where you can. So I'm kind of excited to see more. I hope they focus more on like this emotional side of it all. But yeah, I'm surprised it did well. I'm excited for more of this series.
Well, good. So, sorry, losing my voice here a little bit. Um, Tenru Series the Egg are getting better, and that's glad to hear that. How charged it's getting. So before we get into My Hero Academia, we'll round out with Rerun Tsukumogami. So, Deanna, I'm really liking
Yes.
every time you share pictures of the show. I'm really liking the character designs, and so I'm curious to
Right?
see what's going. Yeah, like that's the big draw, I assume. Um, this show, from people I also know, speaking of which, of people like who've been watching it, they've been really high on it as well as you've been. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts were on this episode. Then.
I really enjoyed this episode because there was a twist at the end.
Ooh.
So I mentioned last week that Konosuke is back, but he's not really the focus of the episode. He asks Seiji to investigate this man named Hansuke, who's a proprietor of a seaweed business. And so apparently Hansuke, he is this really handsome man who throws lavish parties, but has also been generous to Konosuke by inviting him to parties and giving his acquaintances lots of money. And so Konosuke, like, he feels kind of off put by this. So he wants Seiji to figure out, like, why is he so generous? Why does he have so much money? And so Hansuke invites Konosuke, Seiji, and Oko to this boat party. And they're on this boat going down a river and they see 4 watchtowers. And then as they're going along the river, the watchtowers turn into 3 and then 2 and then 1. So it's about the perspective of where you're at. And so Seiji on the boat offers Hansuke a smoking pipe, which is one of the Skumogami named Go, and Hansuke reacts to the pipe in a very strange way because of this, Seiji wants to figure out why, and so he has Hansuke take the Skumogami to the house so that the Skumogami can eavesdrop and figure out why Hansuke had such a reaction to it. And so the Skumogami find out from Go that he used to have an owner who left his wife to marry a geisha, but then he
Hmm.
fell out of love with that geisha too. And so Seiji has a suspicion that the husband is Hansuke, so he meets with him and asks if the story is true. And so Hansuke has this like sad face and asks Seiji to go on a boat ride with just the 2 of them. And then at that point, I was kind of like, that sounds very ominous. And I was afraid that it turned into like a horror story, but thankfully it didn't. Uh, but, just asking, oh, let's just go there. But so Hansuke actually reveals himself as a woman. And so that the same woman who was left behind by her husband. So it wasn't the husband that Hansuke, like Seiji suspected as, but it was the wife. And so
Ooh.
she explains that she disguised herself as a man in order to run a business because she's really good at cooking seaweed, and that was like her only way of like living and taking care of herself after her husband leaving her. And so there's this really sweet moment during the boat ride where Seiji points out the watchtowers again, and then Hansuke is like, "Yeah, like I'm the one who told you about the watchtowers." But then Seiji was like, "Well, Hansuke told me, but not the woman on the boat with me right now." So,
Oh.
so Seiji's like, "So there are 3 watchtowers," but then when he says that, there's like a flash of an image of like her husband, and a geisha. And then when he says there are 2 watchtowers now, it flashes to an image of Konosuke and her. And then when it's just 1 watchtower, it's just like an image of her. And so I thought that was really great storytelling. And then I just love the fact that we kind of have this transgender character of sorts where, she's been living as a man this whole time just to like help herself make a living. So
Yeah.
yeah.
In this period where you need to do something like that to
Hmm.
make it anywhere. So that's yeah, this show sounds really good. like
Yeah.
so far, like every time you talk about it, it makes me just like Planet With. It gets me excited to want to see it for myself. And so, if we experience a lull with next season, I think I'm gonna really catch up with the show and see what it's like for myself. So, thanks for sharing that. So we'll round things out with the hypest episode of the week, My Hero Academia. So yeah, as we talked about in the previous episode, Bakugo pulls Deku aside and basically reveals to him that he knows everything, the secret that Deku has with All Might in terms of All Might giving him his power, and so Bakugo, in feeling bits of shame, decides that he wants to let out his pent up emotions by getting into a fight with Deku and putting him in his place in a way, but later on, it actually turns out that Bakugo is actually ashamed that he feels like he was the one responsible for All Might losing his powers because he got himself kidnapped by the villains, and since All Might had to go and rescue him, he put himself in this very dangerous position where he had to use up all of his power to protect him. And so, yeah, he felt very responsible for that, which was a great way to add a lot of dimension to Bakugo's character. He's not just angry all the time, he actually deeply cares about it. And this is something we talked about before, that Bakugo is actually very smart and very, he is a very smart person, a very caring guy, even if it's not always revealed properly, I guess would be a way to put it. And he really tapped into his emotions in this episode, which was pretty powerful, all things considered. I'm not going to say it's related to like the Naruto Sasuke moment, but it was kind of interesting to see how things went this way. And these two, Deku and Bakugo, came to a mutual understanding of each other through Bakugo's pent up feelings. And it was kind of nice that even in the next in the little post credit scene, I don't know if you both stuck around after the credits and noticed that new scene, but like they were cleaning up the dorms because they were caught by the teachers, and so Deku makes a comment like, "What'd you think about my powers?" And Bakugo's like, "You really need to not swing as wide because you can't react as quickly as you could." And so I liked how it's a genuine rivalry, which is kind of like what All Might mentioned as well, that they want to help each other get better, so they become the two best heroes out there. So I thought that was pretty great. But going into next episode, it looks like we're going to see the return of the villains, who are sort of kind of coming out of the woodworks now that the provisional exams are done, which is weird timing. Like, I wonder if they're gonna kind of go through and say like, this is what they've been up to this entire time, and not just, okay, now that they're way better than they were before, now we can start fighting. It's like, I don't know if you should have waited so long, but I just thought that was great. And I will also say that when I watch these fight scenes, these intense fight scenes, it kind of makes me want to go to the gym because every time I'm like, man, these guys, they're like ripped and they just destroying each other, and it's like, I need to go work out or something because I feel kind of like that way. What'd you think about this episode, Nusha?
I loved it. I was so happy to see that they really did the fight from the manga justice with the way they portrayed it here. And I think 90% of it was the voice actor behind Bakugo. I think they
Oh,
really, you
Yeah.
really felt like the emotion and like the heartbreak he was feeling. Like this kid who's usually so standoffish and screaming, you kind of just hear him bursting apart at the seams that like he was the cause for his idol's retirement. Um, but yeah, of course, this episode was going to be very centric on these two characters, and we got to see how both of them have this ideal for what the number one hero should be. I think Deku focuses a lot on saving people and being like a symbol, whereas Bakugo very much focuses on strength and raw power. And both of them aren't wrong. Like All Might says at the end, they need to kind of find a middle ground, and then that's how you become like a true number one hero. And it might even involve not just one number one hero. Maybe they need to break down the notion that there's like one big guy at the top, and maybe the number one quote unquote can be like a tag team. The two of them kind of lifting themselves up and becoming number one in their own rights. Yeah, it was an amazing episode. The fight was great. Uh, there was a really interesting, or it was kind of weird because I think there's a soundtrack. There's a track called Deku and Kachan where they kind of mix their two themes together into like one soundtrack, and I was kind of surprised they didn't use that for this fight scene. I was kind of waiting to hear that, but maybe there's going to be another moment down the line where they bust that out. But start to finish, this was an amazing episode, and I had a hard time going to sleep after I finished it because I was so
Oh.
hyped up.
Oh,
It was like 2 in the morning, and I was like, my heart is going crazy. I can't.
That's
But,
not the coffee, right? It was actually your.
Yeah. No, this is like all the caffeine I need is from this hype ass episode.
Oh yeah, that's.
And there's only more to come. Like there's so much great stuff coming up, and I'm excited to see so much more.
Yeah, that's shown
Standout
in
moments
a nutshell
animated.
right there. Yeah.
Mhm.
What'd you think about it, Deanna?
Yeah, I was blown away by this episode, like from the voice acting to the action sequences. And also like Nucha, like you mentioned, just hearing Bakugo break down like that and admit he's actually weak really made me feel sorry for him.
Mhm.
And it's like because we as an audience, we like knew that he was kind of suffering from this inferiority complex, but he never opened up about it until now. So I think also the voice acting played a major part in how his character was portrayed in this episode. And also you mentioned about, Deku and Bakugo having these two different ideals about what's a hero. And I think like Deku and Bakugo are like two halves of a whole, and like that whole it's the definition of what a true hero is. So, like they've become true rivals now, and I think it was really sweet that at the end or like after the credits, Deku asked for advice from Bakugo, and Bakugo just like gave him pointers, and that really shows how the relationship has developed too. But I want to mention honorable mention Eraser's ponytail or man bun.
Yeah. I was like, oh.
On fleek.
Oh my god.
But
Man buns.
I'm excited for next week's episode because we're also gonna meet the top 3. We're gonna meet
Yes.
Mirio. I've heard so much about this
such
guy,
a
and I
great
can't
character.
wait
I
to meet him.
can't wait.
Yeah. So I wonder like who's gonna voice him and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be exciting.
It's gonna be great. I'm excited. As you said, it got me really excited. It's like shonen in a nutshell. It really delivered a lot, and it was good to see Deku not kind of fold underneath everything. Like I didn't want him to keep running away and being so scared. It's like you gotta stand up for yourself, buddy, or else you're gonna be put down by these villains so quickly. It's like, nah, I gotta fight him. I gotta beat him up. This will put him in his place. While also, we've got to do this. So I was glad that they didn't focus so much on Deku being kind of like a coward or overanalyzing everything. It's like, now I gotta fix myself if I want to be this ideal form of what I want to be. So I was glad to see that.
I won't be a sandbag.
No, I won't be a sandbag. Exactly. A good line that anybody can say. I'm gonna say that at work. I'm gonna walk up to our supervisor. Like, I'm not gonna be a sandbag.
I was just gonna say, Zach, can you finish this blog? I'm not gonna be a sandbag.
I'm not gonna be a sandbag anymore. And then just start up and start kicking.
Just start kicking the shit out of our.
No one in her. She'll probably kick my ass. It's okay. All right. So, on that note, let's talk about Trigun. Oof. Wow. It's insane. Okay. So, I'm gonna sum up a little bit about what these 2 episodes. We watched episode 15 and 16 of Trigun, and so people are watching along. This is where we're at. And so, yeah, episode 15, quite the way to start an episode. So we get to see Legato again. It's been a hot minute since we last saw him. And so that was a moment where the Roderick gang showed up at this bar inside of a town. And, they're just, apparently they took a few women as their own personal sex slaves. And so Legato happens to be there enjoying, I don't know if it's pancakes or something like that. And I guess he's got the power to take control of people's bodies because he causes one of the people from the Router gang to rip his own heart out, which was quite the scene. And they just kind of take each other out. And so they approach Legato as he's leaving. And suddenly this group called the Gun Ho Guns interferes, which it turns out that the big armored dude that fought Vash a few episodes ago with the mask and everything, he was actually part of the Gun Ho gangs, and he was apparently killed after that all went down. Despite Vash sparing him, he ended up dying anyway. So that's kind of how they deal with things there. So it's clear that Vash will have to go through all the Gun-Ho guns in order to get to Legato at some point. And the first one he encounters, aside from that armored man, is this woman named Dominique the Cyclops, who has this incredible rate of speed. And it turns out later that it's because she can take control of her opponent's 5 senses, which I thought was a really cool, unique way of approaching a character. It's like she has this ability to do something like that. But of course, Vash being who he is, he figures things out. She loses, uh, and I will say Vash spares her, and she kind of just disappears until next episode. But I don't know if you guys have read the manga. Her fate is a lot worse in the manga. I found out because after she loses, she apparently takes to her own life. I think
Oh
she just
God.
like jumps off a cliff. Is what happened to her. And so in this in the show though, it's a lot different. Of course, is that she just kind of is spared and she escapes with Legato. So let's go one episode at a time. What'd you think about this episode, Nusha?
I was very happy. I was a little worried. The last two episodes we watched was the first one was like a recap, and then the one after that was kind of lighthearted compared to
It was a Meryl and Millie episode, fairly much.
yeah, which is great, but just like placed where it was after this slaughter, and we see Ash. Sorry, I'm mistaking my two blonde
Pokemon?
anime.
Oh,
I keep
okay.
getting the shit mixed up.
Ash is covered in blood. What?
But yeah, it was kind of jarring to jump back to more of the same after such like a dark episode. So I was happy to see
Yeah,
we're switching back to a more serious tone.
absolutely.
I love this like gallery of villains that they've set up with Legato, like a bunch of really neat characters and designs. You have like the samurai, you have Dominic with the devil's eye, you have like the guy who's a walking landmine. Just a bunch of neat designs, and it's cool seeing like a group of mass murderers who feel like they can judge humanity, being the foil to Vash, who believes that people can repent and that he's in no place to lay down that judgment.
Yeah,
And Legato is still such a strong presence in this series. Every time he shows up, the music, the tone, everything completely shifts into high gear, and like my heart rate starts going up whenever he shows up on scene.
oh
So
yeah, crazy
I'm
good voice
really
acting
excited.
too. Yeah, just like
Really good. Yeah. Such a like haunting character too, like the facial expressions he makes and like the choices he makes, like killing certain people but not others. And then I'm really excited to see him and Vash interact because there's clearly some past between the two.
clearly, yeah. Considering what happens in the next episode, what'd you think about it,
Mhm.
Deanna?
Not gonna lie, this episode was pretty sexist.
Yeah, he
uh,
did mention that part about he grew up her 5 times in the time that it took. Yeah, I was like, oh,
yeah, but that being said, I really like that we got a female quote unquote antagonist of sorts to go against Bash, and of course that whole fight was really good. But then of course, yeah, he goes soft on her in the end because she's a woman, and so
yeah.
I'm glad she didn't jump off a cliff though.
Oh
So,
yeah, it was way worse than that. I mean, yeah, he has encountered a few women in the past. Like one of the early episodes, it was like that
mhm,
office. Was it the sheriff? I think. Um,
yeah.
but no one like this. It would have been nice if she lasted a little bit longer than just this. What amounted to like maybe 10, 15 minutes. But that's kind of how it is right now. We're getting into the second half, and so we're trying to get through all these different villains. And that leads us to the next episode where one of those said villains only lasts maybe about a minute. So I thought that was great. So episode 16. Vash is told that he needs to head to Augusta City in a very dramatic fashion. This man who apparently is possessed tells him to do so and then proceeds to shoot himself. So yeah, we're getting really deep into it now. Very, very serious moments here. So Vash doing the right thing and forcibly evacuating everybody inside of Augusta City. We see what happens to the first two members Vash faced, including Dominique. So the armored dude and Dominique, they are crucified on the side of a wall, which is kind of scary. And the culprit is E.G. Mine, which, as Anusha, as you mentioned before, he's the walking landmine. Who can shoot spikes. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it's the same guy because it's kind of weird that he's called E.G. Mine, but it seems like it's mostly him like having like these shells that he shoots spikes out of. So he calls himself the fifth Gunho Gun. And then suddenly the ninth Gunho Gun, Rayday the Blade, appears and proceeds to kill him. So that was like, okay. That was, I don't know why he didn't want to wait, but I guess he just said, you were already pretty much taken care of. Vash could kill you anytime he wants, but Vash doesn't kill anybody, so I don't know why they would not want to just team up. But whatever. It seems like these gang of outlaws are kind of in it for themselves. You know, it's their own pride, their own honor, their own. You know, they want their own spotlight. So he proclaims himself as a samurai who follows the path of Bushido, and yeah, he takes care of him. So Ichiman is dead. So I will say that from there, this show goes into almost like Dragon Ball Z mode, which was pretty bizarre. It's kind of like Tree of Might or something like that. So apparently, the gun that Vash has, one of them, I don't know if it's both of them, but it apparently is one of them, can transform into some sort of alien weapon. But you know, it's made pretty clear from that point that that this is that destructive power that caused the travesty from before. It's even mentioned as well, like from July many years ago. This is the reason that that whole place was destroyed and millions of refugees appeared, and you know, all that travesty happened. So I was wondering what the effects of was that, you know, that Vash creates a hole in the moon. I thought that for a moment that was what Legato always wanted, like maybe the fragments from the moon would break off and destroy the planet, but it doesn't seem. It means like it's kind of like, once again, like Dragon Ball Z. I just so happen to blow up a chunk of the moon or the entire moon, and that's about all that really is the problem here. But yeah, it seems like going from here, Meryl and Millie can no longer be involved with Vash, with the acts caused by Vash, because they're labeling it as him as a person as an act of God. And so just like your favorite insurance company, acts of God are not really covered by insurance. And so it's something that they are saying that now they are going to be separated from Vash. I'm assuming they'll still find a way to get close to him in some form, but that was a pretty dramatic moment, and it seemed like even Millie was like really upset with Vash about the road that he's gone down by making Meryl cry. And the big part though is that next episode, I don't know if you guys saw the thumbnail, episode 17 is titled Rem Severum. We're finally going to get to know more details on Vash's love interest, Rem, and so that's we're going to get really into that series emotional moments there, so I'm very curious to see about it. So what'd you think about this episode, Deanna?
What I really liked about this episode was when we got glimpses of the previous side characters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, as gossip was spreading that, you know, Vash the Typhoon or whatever, he's, you know,
Humanoid typhoon. Yeah.
yeah, humanoid typhoon. And so like they hear this, but they like know who he really is after encountering him
Yeah.
from previous episodes. And it was just nice. It was a nice callback because like these characters are obviously still living their lives and we haven't forgotten about them. So I really like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, just seeing Meryl, like her feelings about Vash from the beginning have changed so much now. And like I don't think we've seen her cry at all before. So for her to like break down like this, it's very telling of that development of the relationship. So yeah, and then Wolfwood, he's back, and I feel like he's gonna die the next time he crosses paths with Vash. And
Yeah.
and apparently he knows the samurai guy from before, because it seemed like they were like acquaintances, but then he just like kills the
Kills him
samurai
anyway.
guy, so.
Yeah, he does. He
Yeah.
has no problem killing somebody for being, you know, was it a priest or a pastor or something like that? He has no problem. A reverend, I don't know. He has no qualms with doing something like that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know if that's something they're gonna like delve into, or it's just, oh, he's dead, so we're not gonna touch on that.
Probably so. What'd you think about this new show?
Yeah, a lot darker. There's more stuff going on. We're definitely making a shift in the story here. Like you mentioned, I don't know what their main goal is, this like group of villains, the Gung Ho Guns. It seems like they're trying to force Vash to kill. Like they
Yeah.
pit him against this samurai character who ironically wants to face all the fear and like the near death experiences that Vash kind of hates that he has to face on a day-to-day basis. And Legato controls him into using his like giant alien gun to kill the samurai. And it seems like they're trying to force him to break his code of not killing, and it might be because there's a connection between him, Legato, and Rem. Maybe they have like a story going on together. And I wonder if Legato maybe is the holder of the other gun that Vash was talking about before, because I think we still haven't gotten any uh, highlights on that.
Any resolution, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Wolfwood showing up again was surprising to me. I know he's coming back and he's a returning character, but has he killed anyone up until this point aside from this samurai character?
I don't think so, honestly. Like,
Because it was,
yeah.
yeah, it was like under my impression that like he was kind of like Vash in that he didn't like taking lives because he also had something he did in his past that he was repenting for. And so it was interesting to see him so callously take a life. And I'm interested to see what he's hiding because it seems like he's, like Deanna said, a little familiar with this group of villains. So I'm excited to see him interact with Vash next time because there's sure to be an interesting chat.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he killed anybody during that little like
That competition.
yeah, that competition, yeah. Like if he
Yeah.
took while Vash was being very careful, I can't tell if whether he was being as careful and during that competition. But also, Bushido dude, Rayday, he was a villain through and through, and so I assume that he killed him because like I can't have you live for all the atrocities you've theoretically committed, since he joined the gang. So imagine that's a big part of that. So much for the life of Bushido, but that's how it is. So yeah, once again though, going into episode 17, we'll learn a lot more about Rem, the person that Vash has a promise to not kill anybody. And so, considering everything that's been up to this point, how he's trying to stop himself, I mean, even so far as rather than killing another person, blowing up a chunk of the moon, I'm interested to see what'll happen from here on out. So now we'll move into the finale, the end of our episode here. I will mention I saw that Hanibado has got a new episode, so that is back on. So next week we'll talk about that particular episode and see what's going on with the crazy people who play badminton and find out what's happening there. Yeah. So on that note, once again, I'd like to thank Nusha, Deanna, being a part of this podcast. Thank you all out there for listening. And as always, catch us next week for yet another edition of the anime review, and we'll talk about Trigun episodes 17 and 18 then. Bye, everyone.